Hello, everyone, and welcome to the WrestleZone SmackDown Double Down. I am your host, Colin Tessier. I'm flying solo this week because John Clark was unavailable, but I'm still here, so we're going to do the best that we can. SmackDown this week was very enjoyable, as always, or at least it has been for the past couple of months. Roman Reigns still killing it as the tribal chief, and we had Drew McIntyre show up, signaling that the brand split's likely dead, but that's okay. We had Sami Zayn defend the Intercontinental Championship, proving that titles do exist in WWE. And we have the final chapter, supposedly, of the Seth Rollins and Rey Mysterio feud after what's felt like an eternity of those two going back and forth, and with tons of drama with the Rey Mysterio family and Seth Rollins. So there's lots to dig into, including stuff that happened outside the show, because Selena Vega got fired or I should say released right before the show started. And we'll get into that and plenty of other headlines as well. But with all that said, let's get right to it. And make sure to comment so you can get your comments on the screen. We can talk about that because, as I said, there's a lot to dig into. So going off of a hot main event, we had Drew McIntyre show up, and he set up a match with Jey Uso. McIntyre got right in Roman Reigns' face. Of course, the WWE champion for Monday Night Raw will face Roman Reigns at Survivor Series in what's basically an all-star game for the WWE. And Drew McIntyre took issue with the fact that Roman Reigns basically ignored him and expected that he'd be facing Randy Orton. And he didn't want to be taken for granted, so he got right in the Tribal Chief's face. And of course, the Tribal Chief did not care for that whatsoever. So that meant that Jey Uso wanted to take care of business. And as we've seen in the last couple of weeks, we had Jey Uso basically stand up for Roman Reigns, and I guess you could say defend his honor. So that set up a really compelling main event where, Jey Uso probably more than anybody continues to benefit from this era, I should say. He's one of the guys that's been thrust into this prominent role, and he's really doing very well where he's, main eventing SmackDown every week. He's gotten pay-per-view matches, and he's involved with really what has been the best storyline in WWE TV. So it's been great to see that. And he almost picked up a win over the former WWE champion, but Roman Reigns pretty much cost him the win in the main event because even when Jey was right about to win, Roman came down and said he didn't want Jey to win. He wanted to make Drew McIntyre understand. So like we saw last week with Kevin Owens and before that with Daniel Bryan, Jey Uso really took the fight to Drew and looked like he was about to lay the beating on him, but Drew kind of capitalized on that distraction and picked up the win here on SmackDown. And that shouldn't be looked at as a setback for Jey Uso. Obviously, picking up a win over Drew McIntyre would be huge, but that would also kind of make Drew look weak heading into his WWE Championship match on Raw this week. So I think it was the right call. It was a really good match. I've talked about it for the past couple of weeks now, but SmackDown has really been that brand where the matches are incredible. It's a really like a work rate brand. I think that has really made SmackDown shine recently. So that really was the theme again tonight with a good main event. And we saw that elsewhere with Seth Rollins, Rey Mysterio putting on an unsanctioned match in the final chapter of their feud. Now they announced that, and I was immediately skeptical. I thought, okay, they're just gonna, do something, toss out some shenanigans or something. But Rey Mysterio and Seth Rollins put on a pay-per-view quality match. They got a lot of time. It was a long match. We got tables, steel chairs. It was a pretty hard-hitting match. Rey Mysterio, he can still go. He amazes me every single time I watch him. If you looked at him, you would not guess that he's been in the ring for multiple decades at this point. And it's really cool to see that. And he picked up the win here. Now, I did have an issue with this match, of course, where Murphy wound up turning on Seth Rollins again, which did make a lot of sense to me because, as we saw just a couple weeks ago, Murphy turned on Seth, and I thought that would kind of be the start of this new branch for the storyline. And we have David Eckman saying, thank goodness for no more Seth and Rey. I will definitely agree with that. This feud went on felt like forever. It's been months and months and months of the same stuff, and it's been really redundant. So thankfully, we're now pivoting to what looks to be Seth Rollins versus Murphy, even though we just got that match. I guess now it's even more personal because now Murphy has officially betrayed Seth. It did seem a little bit, back and forth, like kind of a flip flop with me. I didn't necessarily see the point. Last week we had Murphy saying that this was all part of his own plan, and I guess this was that plan. It was to cost Seth Rollins this final chapter, to cost him the feud officially. Good. It's obviously a good opportunity for Murphy to be in this feud with Rollins at this point. And now it looks like we are going to get that fully fledged feud of the Disciple and the Messiah. So I think that'll be very entertaining, at least in the ring. Obviously, both guys very, very talented. Seth Rollins, Rey Mysterio, both very talented. And now at least Rey looks like he could be moving on to new things. So I'm actually excited to see what happens there. We had Dan Greathouse saying it's a great ending to their feud. Hope to leave it there. Definitely agree. It's time to move on. And as I just said, it looks like we're going to be getting Rollins and Murphy, which could be really good. We'll just have to see what happens. Now we have James Espanto Fernando Tagoe. Sorry if I butchered that, saying, what do you think about Zelina being let go? I will be covering that later on after I talk about the show. But just in a nutshell, I think it's such a shame. Zelina, very, very talented, and WWE definitely underutilized her. I think they were just barely scraping the surface of what she could do as a wrestler. She was a great manager for Andrade and Angel Garza. It's really a shame. I definitely don't agree with it. Because as we've been finding out, they've been having some details come out about, WWE was going to release her anyway, and then she made the tweet rather than the belief being that they released her because of the tweet. But we'll definitely get into that. And I just want to finish talking about the show first, but we'll get into all of the headlines and stuff afterwards. So definitely stay tuned for that. We have Michael Yuffa saying, I hear Seth Rollins is taking time off after the Survivor Series. Kevin and I talked about, or maybe even John and I talked about that a couple weeks ago, because that's been rumored for a while. And that's if that is true, it's definitely well-deserved. Seth works very hard, obviously. He's on TV practically every week, at times seemingly carrying the show. Even if he's not the champion, is kind of being involved with some of the main storylines. I hope he's taking time off. I think he's gotten a little stale in the sense for that very reason, where he's always on the show, a lot of times always doing the same thing, especially when it was on Raw. It's so redundant booking. So I think it's time. Obviously, we know with Becky Lynch being pregnant and everything, it would make all the sense in the world for him to take time off right now. So if that is true, I want to say good riddance. Obviously, Seth is a great performer, great asset to the roster. But hopefully, if he takes time off, he can come back refreshed, both individually and creatively. The creative team will be able to kind of come up with some new stuff for him, because I think what he's been doing recently has run its course. So maybe that means Murphy picks up a win next week and writes him off. We'll just have to wait and see. Now we have, as for Rey Mysterio, Noel Orlando Roland, sorry if I butchered that again, saying, I can see Murphy and Dominic go for the tag titles. I say go for it. I think they would make a great team. As father and son, you'd certainly think so, right? You'd hope they'd have some good chemistry there. You see, so I'm sorry. He said Murphy and Dominic. Now that would be interesting. I thought he meant Rey and Dominic. Either way, I think that's definitely an angle they could take. You have the Murphy and Dominic as those kind of friends turned enemy, or I should say enemies turned friends. I think that could be compelling. Both young guys, both especially once Murphy wraps up with Seth. You don't really know where they're going with him. Dominic's been kind of floating, a little aimlessly and recently, ever since he's kind of wrapped up his portion of the in-ring stuff with the Seth Rollins feud. So I think he and Murphy could be a good team. I'd also be down to see Rey and Dominic teaming up as the father and son team to win the titles, or at least chase them. I think that'd be very entertaining as well. I don't really know what the end game with the Mysterio family is at this point. You have to think that somewhere down the road, Rey and Dominic will face off. I just don't know. Obviously, if that were to happen, it'll probably be a good way. Obviously not anytime in the near future, because that's something you want to build to over the long haul. So elsewhere on SmackDown, we had an Intercontinental Championship match, which was refreshing because a lot of the time the mid-card titles are just props, basically, which is a shame because both guys holding them right now, in this case, Sami Zayn with the Intercontinental Championship, very talented, one of WWE's best heels, and I think the world of Sami. I think he's really, really entertaining, and I'm very glad that he's finally defending the title, because it's just, again, a lot of time it just kind of seems like it's just the title is there rather than actually being used for anything at all. This match kicked off the show after the Drew and Roman Reigns bit, so we had Sami Zayn defending the title against Apollo Crews, and while I did just say I was glad the title is being defended, I was not so glad to see that it was against Apollo Crews. A lot of the time, I think title matches should be earned. And while Apollo's a former United States champion, he hasn't really done anything since moving to SmackDown. I think this would have been a good spot for a Daniel Bryan match, but then Daniel Bryan got written off a couple of weeks ago. So, as you would expect, Sami and Apollo put on a good match. Both guys very talented in the ring. As I said earlier, SmackDown's got that work rate going for it, where every match you can expect to be pretty darn good. So these guys definitely did that. I definitely think Sami could have benefited from a clean win here, but instead, as a dastardly heel, he just simply outsmarted Apollo by tying him up in the ropes and getting a count-out victory. So on the one hand, it made Sami look very smart, which is what you want to see for a heel. But on the other hand, not a very decisive win, which would have been good to kind of have him pick up that decisive win over someone that Bobby Lashley defeated, because Bobby Lashley and Sami Zayn will clash in a champion versus champion match at Survivor Series. So good match. Good to see the IC title being defended. And again, SmackDown work great matches to fill the show, so that was good to see. Speaking of Survivor Series, we had yet another qualifying match for the women's team heading into the show, where we had Natalya, Tamina, and Liv Morgan initially clash in a triple threat match, but then we saw Chelsea Green arrive on SmackDown, and that was quite surprising. So we had Chelsea Green standing backstage with Adam Pearce, kind of hinting that she'd have a presence. And then after commercial break, there she was, thrust in this fatal four-way match. Based on that, you would think that she would have won, but she disappeared very quickly into the match, which was very weird. There's a rumor going around that she may have been injured. WrestleZone will definitely provide details if anything becomes available. Based on just what we saw, it was very weird that she got the spot, she came in and debuted, and then just kind of disappeared. But Liv Morgan picked up the win to qualify for Team SmackDown, so she'll be teaming up with her Riot Squad teammate Ruby Riot on Team SmackDown, and they've probably got Raw beat at this point in terms of cohesiveness because Raw is just both men and women's teams are full of divisiveness. So maybe SmackDown will have the advantage. We'll just have to wait and see. Craig Backlund did just mention Chelsea Green on SmackDown. She was someone that was kind of underutilized on NXT in a lot of ways. So that is one way that it's kind of unusual to see her put in this spot where she wasn't necessarily a top star in NXT, but she is getting this big spot. We have Dan Greathouse saying Liv Morgan finally getting the win she deserves. I'll definitely agree with that. I think Liv is very talented. I think that she could definitely be if not necessarily a champion, then definitely a solid player in the women's division. So that was very good to see. And we have Noel Orlando Roland saying, does it look like the Street Profits are turning heel? And I also had that thought. Later in the show, we had the Street Profits backstage with Big E, once again hyping up the Street Profits match with the New Day at Survivor Series. They're trying to get Big E. It was basically just teasing Big E about the New Day and how they've split up since the draft. And they had these little like plates kind of teasing that they're handing out the L's, literally food-shaped L's, which is a little weird, like half creative, half weird. But you could, that's kind of Vince McMahon humor for you. So and then Biggie did as usual. This happened the other week where Biggie just maniacally laughed at the Street Profits, and the Street Profits glared at him. And it definitely did seem like they're at least teasing the Street Profits turning heel. And I want to know what you all think. What would you think of the Street Profits turning heel? Because they've been just such pure baby faces up to this point in their WWE run, especially on the main roster. And I could see them turning heel. I think most really good baby faces could really thrive as heels in the sense that, you know, if you've got the charisma, if you've got the ability to work the crowd, you really should be able to do it kind of as a face or a heel. And especially with Montez Ford, he's got that swagger and charisma. I definitely could see him succeeding as a heel, although I do think his best chance for success is as a face. And Noel or Orlando Roland saying it looks like the all women's teams from Raw and SmackDown be on Women 5-on-5 Survivor Series is a twist of the Women's Tag Team Championship. Not quite sure what he meant by that. I guess he means that the Riot Squad are involved and they were chasing the women's tag titles. And of course, on Raw, you've got the women's tag team champions. So there are definitely connections there. And, you know, we'll just have to wait and see what happens with the women's tag titles. I definitely expect Asuka to eventually defend against Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, maybe both at the same time. That's something I've been hoping to see. But elsewhere on SmackDown, we had Otis literally sitting and catering, and I don't think that bodes well for him. He lost the Money in the Bank briefcase, and I thought that was a shame. You know, they definitely didn't capitalize on his momentum when he won the case. He dropped it to The Miz at Hell in a Cell. Tucker turned on Otis, and you would think that would have led to a feud between tag team partners. But then Tucker got thrust in the 24/7 title scene, and Otis is literally sitting and catering. So obviously, not a good look for Otis, and he picked up win over Dolph Ziggler. Again, that's a feud we've seen a lot. Definitely not anything fresh by any means. They faced off WrestleMania. They had a feud early this year, and it was pretty decisive. So thankfully, that doesn't look to be where they're going. But then after the match, Chad Gable, formerly known as Shorty G, approached Otis backstage and teased that they're going to be working together in some sort. Hopefully not as a tag team. I think this is a good chance to have Otis shine at least as a solos guy. So maybe Chad will manage Otis to be kind of a coach of some sort. He teased the Alpha Academy. So that was pretty compelling. Definitely a new direction for Otis, and a new direction is better than literally sitting and catering. So that was at least a good sign. Michael Yuff is saying they did not announce who the fifth member of Team SmackDown is, And that is absolutely correct. You would think they would announce that. They do still have next episode, thankfully, because the next episode will be the go-home show. So we'll have to wait and see. At this point, I've got to think Big E will be on the team. Big E is literally doing nothing right now. He was playing Trivial Pursuit the other week. Now he's laughing, just, cracking jokes and literally just doing nothing. So if it's not Big E, maybe Kevin Owens, even though he just, took a loss and doesn't always seem in a position where he'd be doing that. Dana Bryan written off. Literally, Big E is the only guy that I could really see deserving that spot at this point. Maybe Rey, actually, now I think of it, Rey, Dominic, kind of as a dark horse, maybe, or Murphy, unless he gets written off next week, or I should temporarily written off. But I'm thinking Big E all the way for that one, because if a guy's not doing anything at all, put him on Survivor Series team so at least gets on the card, because that's what these matches are really meant for in a lot of ways. And another spot that remains open is for the women's team. I believe there's another spot open, and Dan Greathouse is saying that Natty or Natalia is still going to get one of those spots. I mean, I certainly think so. She's had, I think, 3 chances now and struck out each and every time. I initially thought tonight was going to be her night, but instead Liv Morgan won. So it could turn out that Natalia gets the spot next week. That would certainly be what I would expect. That's been the theory that I've seen a lot of people speculating, is why have someone literally lose every single match for the chance to qualify if you're not going to have them eventually win? That's just kind of a natural story, right? So we have Noah Orlando Roland saying, what if the Undertaker's the 5th member? Oh, please no. I've talked about this with Kevin and John. Undertaker, it's not good I would not want to see that. Like, please, Undertaker, don't have Undertaker be on Team SmackDown for Survivor Series. If you're gonna ever have him wrestle again, do another cinematic match. I hope he doesn't wrestle again. I think obviously the Boneyard match, perfect send off. Granted, you could say, oh, SmackDown's his final farewell, his 30th anniversary. Though that's true, but give a promo, do some cheap fan service. Don't go out there in this tag team match just because he said the other day he doesn't want to tarnish his legacy, and that's exactly what being on Team SmackDown Survivor Series would be. But there's no need for it. Just don't do it. It'd be a good. I could see there's some appeal to it, for the reasons I mentioned. It's his anniversary, but I really hope that's not the case. Now, Dan Greathouse, definitely I'm with you here. He says, what are they doing with Biggie? They're slowly killing his push. I wouldn't even say slowly. They are rapidly killing his push. When they started the singles thing, you really thought Biggie's going to thrive. He's going to really break out on his own. The guy's got all the talent in the world. He's got the look. He's got charisma. Everything you could possibly want in a top guy. On a silver platter. Literally, WWE just needs to take it, and they are not doing it. He was playing a boy game the other week. I can't stress that enough. It's such a shame. I think Biggie, if WWE gives him the chance, if they give him the proper creative, future world champion, multiple time world champion, future megastar, Roman Reigns level right now, except on the babyface side, Biggie could be the top guy for them. I definitely believe that. I definitely hope that after Survivor Series, at least, that they do something with him, because what a talented guy. I think the world of him. I really think they're misusing him, and one of many people, and it's such a shame. They have such a talented roster, and they're just misusing him so badly, and I hate to see it. He's just so talented, and they're just wasting him. And I really hope that they change course on that, because he's just literally wasting away. And it's just awful to see. I don't know why. I saw there's a rumor a couple weeks ago they don't have any plans for him right now, and that's awful. Like, when you have someone that talented, you've got to find something for him. You got to just think of something rather than nothing. And I guess you could say it's better to keep him off TV if they don't have anything. But then I'll say if you don't have anything, just farm out there for something. And at least he's been on TV, these 2 weeks where he's been with the Street Profits. But they've got to find something for him, because they're really wasting him right now. And Iridian Fierro, sorry if I mispronounced that, suggests that maybe they just put him back in the New Day and still push him. And that's feasible in the sense that they could send him to Raw. Or, as we saw with Drew McIntyre showing up tonight, maybe the brand split's dead, so they could just have the New Day fall between brands and do things that way. I think that'd be a step back for Big E in the sense that this singles run was supposed to be his chance to break out on his own. But at the same time, if they're not doing anything with him, then maybe tying him back with the New Day would be for the best, because obviously those three are immensely entertained together. And that'd be better than the nothing they've been doing so far. So maybe that would be for the best Iridium. We'll just have to wait and see. Otherwise, those are really the big developments. Other than Carmella attacking Sasha Banks again, that was the main big thing that happened. Otherwise, Sasha Banks came out, cut another promo. She was in the Mandalorian today. For Star Wars fans out there, I heard she killed it. I have not seen it myself, so I can't comment on it. But I think Sasha Banks, at least from what we've seen in the ring and in promos, fantastic wrestler, fantastic promo. I think she's definitely on the short list of current WWE superstars that is, poised for a really good Hollywood run if she hopes to, if that's what she wants to do. This Mandalorian episode could very well be the springboard to that. But here we had Sasha give a promo. Bayley came out, and I literally groaned. I thought, oh, here we go. They're going to go with another Bayley and Sasha match. And obviously, just like this Seth Rollins and Rey Mysterio feud, that's another one that's just dragged on at this point, and it's time to move on. And thankfully, it was just a diversion because Carmella attacked Sasha for, I think, the second week in a row since Carmella's official return. And I talked about it last week, but I'm still not really feeling this character of Carmella. I think this would have been a good chance to have her give a promo, but instead she just attacked Sasha, left her lying. And my first thought was that Sasha looked like a chump, and that's not a great look for a new champion. But hopefully, we'll get a chance to kind of hear from Carmella. And as I just said, it looks like Bayley and Sasha's not done, and that's what Dan Greyhouse saying. They're definitely not done, and probably not in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, no feud's ever really done officially. At least there's always opportunity for another match, another story, another chapter. And with those two, obviously, their friendship, their rivalry, definitely still a fruitful story to tell. Hopefully, they take a break from it. I could see a triple threat match with Carmella, at least as kind of a transition of sorts to kind of somewhat break away from it. I think that would make some sense, especially that given that Carmella is not really giving promos right now, that she's attacking Sasha, and we had Bayley come out tonight. That very well might be the direction they're going. And back to Biggie for a second. Craig Backlund saying Biggie for the IC title. And I could definitely see that. Biggie did hold the title on his previous singles run years ago at this point. I think that was like 2013, what feels like an eternity ago. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think he and Sammy would be a very good feud, and that'd be a good way to kind of build some prestige for the title. As I said earlier, the title is kind of sitting there on Sammy's shoulder, and it's basically a prop at this point. So at the very least, by having it be in a feud, you'd be kind of featuring the title in that sense, and that's something I always want to see. Both guys immensely talented. So Craig, great idea. I definitely go for it, as I was talking about. Biggie literally wasting away, so I definitely hope to see that, because that's probably the best path forward for Biggie at this point, is going for the IC title. Roman's pretty tied up right now, but the IC title is right there for the picking. So I definitely hope to see that. A lot of people are wanting to see Biggie feud with Roman Reigns. I'm one of those people, and so is Noel Orlando Verlon, saying I can see Biggie feud with Roman Reigns for the title. Leading up to a WrestleMania match, like they did for Kofi, that'd be a nice kind of full circle, or at least kind of callback to Kofi Mania. And I think that'd be really cool, honestly. It's a little hard. Kevin and I are talking about this, and it's a little hard to see where the Royal Rumble's going, because it is November, but still so much can change by January. Big is the guy that makes a lot of sense to win the Rumble, especially if Roman cannot face The Rock, if he can't work that out. Big and Roman Reigns would be a great, kind of plan B. That's a match a lot of people want to see. Both guys immensely talented, and now definitely be here for that match. Both guys, young stars, great stars. Those are two guys you can kind of build the company around really for the years to come. I think that'd be phenomenal, and I would definitely want to see that. That's pretty much a golden feud waiting to happen, and I definitely hope the WWE capitalizes that. That'd be just terrific. And now with some speculation about Drew McIntyre, Anthony Castellano saying, with Drew being on SmackDown tonight, are they leaning towards Drew versus Roman in Survivor Series? And that was the direction that seemed to be at the very least teased. Someone tweeted that they have changed the WWE Championship. It's changed hands, I think, maybe the past 2 years or so, right before Survivor Series. So that very well could happen. Randy Orton will defend the title against Drew McIntyre on Raw this week. I would be pretty surprised if Randy dropped the title already, given they only won it at Hell in a Cell. But tonight made it abundantly clear, even if it doesn't happen in Survivor Series, Drew versus Roman Reigns will happen at some point down the road, sooner rather than later. Both guys, like I was just saying about Biggie and Roman Reigns, immensely talented, two top stars you can really just build around for a long, long time. And I just think that I definitely want to see it, even if it's not the Survivor Series. Actually, maybe they should hold off because Drew and Roman is that kind of feud. Given where both guys are now, you'd want to draw it out. You want to really just be able to build that rather than kind of rushing it for this one-off potentially at Survivor Series. I would say it'd probably be better to hold off and really just kind of be able to invest in it rather than doing this little cheap one-off. And now it's just a little feedback about Carmella. Dan Greathouse saying Carmella is lucky she'll have the best female to carry her and make her look good in Sasha. She can make anyone look good in the ring, in my opinion. And I'll definitely back that up. Sasha, very talented, both in the ring, so they can put on good matches, and in promos. Sasha, very, very talented in promos, and she can definitely kind of build Carmella on the mic in terms of build her as a credible fit, build the story, get those fans interested in the story that has been a little lackluster so far. So I definitely think that'll be it's a great chance for Carmella. It is. Sasha, very talented, even better than coming in against Bayley or someone like that. Sasha just probably, I'll go no more than top 5 women's wrestlers on the roster right now. One of the very best in the world, even, in the ring, on the mic, however you want to say it. She's very, very talented. So that is a good opportunity for Carmella. And that just wraps up about the big developments from SmackDown. One big glaring absence from tonight was Lars Sullivan. We did not get an interview with him this week, probably for the best after what happened last week. We'll just have to see, with WWE, there are times where they just don't do anything for a week and they go right back to the next one. Or maybe this is a sign that they weren't happy with the way things are going. That's pure speculation on my part. I don't know. I was not a fan of the way things were going with Lars Sullivan. At first, it seemed like they were going for some sympathy, and then they had him say that he made people eat glass and bugs and everything weird stuff last week. So we'll have to wait and see if we'll get more of the same, or if there's a new direction for Lars Sullivan, if they want to kind of hit the reset already, which would be a little weird because he just came back. I just don't know, but he was not on the show tonight really whatsoever, and that was a little weird after he got a pretty prominent spotlight last week and the week before, and just since he returned, he's been a pretty featured character. Dan was saying bye-bye Lars. Lars, a guy that doesn't have a lot of fans out there, by and large. He has been wrapped up in a lot of scandals and just kind of hindered by a lot of things, all controversies and injuries, and some people not caring for him in the first place. For all we know, he could be back next week, and this will all be, we'll look back at this and say, well, I was wrong, and that could be the case. Sometimes WWE just it's only a 2-hour show. If this were Raw, you can bet that Lars would have been on the show this week probably if they had plans for him. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. And as I said earlier, there's no way to know what's going to happen on Monday night right now. Obviously, I can't see the future. But they said Noel Orlando Roland saying, I think the only reason if they have Orton drop the title quickly is so he can get it back to the Royal Rumble, lose it to Edge, then win it back, just so he can beat the Ric Flair world title record next year. And I could definitely see that in the sense that if they want to have Randy Orton beat that record, because he is a homegrown guy, I think more than anybody, guys like John Cena, guys like Randy Orton would be the kind of people that could beat that record for the world title reigns that Ric Flair has held for so long now. So I could definitely see that. I think the main theory has been that Edge could come back to the Rumble and win it to challenge Orton. And that's as Noel says, that's kind of the inverse of that, where you could have Orton win the Rumble and go about it that way. I think either one is likely, and it's probably, though that is, either one is very likely for the Rumble. I think Randy Orton or Edge at this point, if Randy Orton does wind up dropping the title, which, as I said, that would surprise me. And just back to Lars for 1 second. Dan Greyhouse saying, Lars, thank you for your service. We support you in all your future endeavors. Now, to be clear, Lars has not been fired. Lars is still employed for all intents and purposes that we know of. But someone that's not is Selena Vega. And that takes us to the headlines outside the show. Right before SmackDown broke, Selena Vega was released from her contract, very surprisingly. Based on the way things looked at the time, Zelina tweeted, I support unionization. And then pretty much 10 minutes later, WWE said their usual line, we support Zelina in her future endeavors, and officially announced her release. And I read that headline and I was shocked. I was surprised. I was disappointed. I was angry. I was upset. Whatever you want to say, I was not happy. I think Zelina's very talented. As I said at the beginning of the show, someone that really could be a star for this company. And now that she's not no longer with WWE, she's definitely going to be somewhere else. Assuming she lands on her feet, if she wants to stay in wrestling, which I would assume she would, I think she's going to be she's going to, make WWE regret this. If not, obviously not personally, not like intentionally necessarily. I just mean, I think she's going to shine. I think she's going to succeed no matter what she does. I think she was a great, great, great manager. I was happy with what I saw in the ring from her. I was always hoping that she would have gotten a bigger spotlight once she got drafted to SmackDown. That has not been the case. And kind of similarly, there have been some rumblings that Alistair Black, as Mike Rieffa points out, Alistair Black requested a move to NXT, and of course, Alistair Black is Lena's husband. Black requested a move to NXT, and it got denied. Obviously, that's not surprising because Black has been really just misused ever since Paul Heyman left. He was a Paul Heyman guy in a way, and he's just been pretty much buried ever since. A lot of people have been joking that Alistair will wind up like Lana, and that he'll kind of get slammed through someone else that was or something could kind of punish him, for lack of a better word. At the very least, he probably won't get a prominent spot, unfortunately, which is again a shame because I think he's very talented as well, and they've been misusing him. It would not surprise me if he were to depart WWE at some point in the near future, because if he's not unhappy already in terms of how he's been misused, obviously he's not going to be happy with how this went down. Now, various sources have reported that WWE was going to release Selena Vega anyway before this tweet broke tonight, and she may have decided to tweet that to make WWE look even worse. If so, well played, Selena Vega. Kind of maximize the optics of that. She was very outspoken about wanting to stay on Twitch, and that's been kind of the story about WWE recently, in terms of their refusal and very strict stance on third-party streaming and stuff like that, Twitch and whatnot. They've been very down on that, and Zelena's been very active on stuff like that. So something like this may have been inevitable, and WWE released her, and Zelina decided to kind of, go out swinging and just kind of do what she could to kind of do what's right and stand up for herself. And I think she deserves a lot of credit for that. Now, of course, the inherent speculation is that Zelina Vega will go to AEW, as Jason Owen points out here, and several other people as well. Could happen. Obviously, AEW being the biggest competitor to WWE at this point, that'd be a natural move, especially given Zelina's spotlight. And AEW has scooped up several of WWE stars that have departed this year, namely Miro or Rusev, I should say. So that would not surprise me at all. As I said, I think she's very talented, and it's such a shame that she did not get to do more, especially as a wrestler. And I really do hope that she gets the chance to shine because she's incredible. And it's mind-boggling sometimes when WWE does not capitalize on some of these people that they have, and some of these real talented, just underutilized and misused, and it's a shame. That's all there is to really say about it. Sean Smith saying that Zelina tried to get some cheap heat. Yeah, that's that's pretty much the case. To kind of to send a tweet out like that on your way out the door, just to kind of give the proverbial middle finger if you already know you're leaving. Why not just kind of go out like that? That's fine. Craig Bacon pointing out that Zelina does not necessarily have to go to AEW. She should go to Impact, and by that logic, she could go to Ring of Honor. She could go to Mexico, any of the promotions down there, CMLL, AAA. I think the possibilities are endless for her. Whatever she wants to do, and a lot of fans seem to be happy with this move for Zelina. Mike Yoffa saying good for her, and absolutely good for her to stand up for herself. Good for her to not back down. I think a lot of people are kind of going along with this mandate from WWE to kind of go along with the fact that they're not on board with third-party streaming, and they're not letting the talent do it, at least as independently as you would hope for. And a lot of people are thinking this move of Zelina Vega could be the beginning of, or I should say, the escalation of this third-party stuff of WWE, where we could get some really, really heated stuff about contracts and rights and unionization, which has been a real hot topic for wrestling fans and wrestlers and the entire industry for a long time now, and increasingly so in recent years. And, I think that would probably for the best in some ways to have some sort of unionization. I say that not necessarily well informed about unions and all these things. Obviously, there are downsides and there are pros and cons, as always, with anything. But I think wrestlers definitely need to have some more rights, some more say in their contracts and everything. And then that's something that I would expect to see at least kind of debated really publicly, really seriously, rather than just kind of hypothetically. And that's something that James Espanto Fernando Tagoy, sorry if I butchered that, basically saying the same thing. I hope the whole forcing their independent contracts from Twitch bites WWE in the butt. And if this does play out in a bigger sense in the public eye, especially if we get lawsuits potentially, or really kind of have this kind of escalate even further, then it could bite WWE in the butt, either by having people leave or people like Zelina that are really passionate about the third-party streaming. We've seen that with Paige recently. A lot of people are very passionate about it. So this very well could bite WWE in the butt, where if they don't change their stance, if they do hold their ground with this, if it doesn't necessarily bite WWE in the butt, it will probably escalate into something much stronger. And James Espanto, Fernando Tagoy naming yet another landing spot for Zelina that I totally forgot. MLW would be a great landing spot for her. Imagine her versus Selena De La Renta, and that's a feud or potential alliance that would make a lot of sense. I think they're very, very similar. I covered MLW when I first started working for WrestleZone, and I immediately thought of kind of mutually. I thought of Zelina whenever I saw Selena De La Renta, and I thought of Zelina Vega whenever I saw. I butchered that, but you know what I mean. I think they're very similar. Very both their look, their charisma, their gimmicks, even they're very similar. That'd be a natural fit of some sort. Again, either as allies or as traditional enemies. And Dan Greathouse says he wants to see Zelina go to AEW to fix the women's division. Now, I will say that Zelina going there would not necessarily fix the women's division, something that has been criticized very often throughout AEW's short history. But it would definitely be a step in the right direction to get someone as talented as that. And we have a big quote from Noah Orlando Orlon saying, I agree with you. The problem is Vince McMahon doesn't know wrestling. He doesn't push guys like Cesaro, Shinsuke Nakamura, Alistair Black, and others just because they don't have charisma. He even said that in Stone Cold podcast. Steve Austin asked him why he hasn't put Cesaro, cuts off there, who is his best technical wrestler out there out of everyone. And that's something that I've definitely noticed for a while. I am a huge fan of Cesaro. I love Alistair Black. I think that he's tremendously talented. Cesaro is one of those guys that is notoriously underutilized, missed opportunity big time. Could have and should have been a world champion, and they just never really went through with it. And now, he's probably on later in his career, probably now that it's kind of, WWE does this themselves. Now Cesaro is probably too old for Vince, so now he probably will never get that world title run, which is a crying shame because Cesaro is so immensely talented. Guys like that who quote unquote don't have charisma yet are immensely talented. It is just such a shame. And we're getting some more feedback about Zelina here. Dan Greathouse saying Britt Baker versus Zelina. Now I'm thinking of Selena De La Renta. Britt Baker versus Zelina. I'd watch it, and that'd be a great match. Obviously, both women very talented, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens with Zelina. I think the world's her oyster, and I think she could go really anywhere she wants to go and thrive, and really be a boost to any company's women's division. And it's such a shame that the WWE just never really capitalized with having such a star. It is mind-boggling, as I said earlier, and she'll prove that she's very, very talented in no time. And now we're going off the deep end. Dan Greathouse saying Adam Cole versus, I believe, Alistair Black in AEW is getting closer to happening. Could happen down the road. Both guys very well could wind up in AEW at some point. Or for all we know, they could stay in WWE for life. There's just no way to know. And some more support for Cesaro here. William T. Wages saying Cesaro is still tough as nails, and no doubt about that. Very, very talented. And I don't mean to call Cesaro old by any means. He can still go 100%. He's very, very talented. He's amazing, and if WWE decides to open their eyes and actually push him, I'd be one of the happiest people on the planet Earth, because I've always thought the world of him, and it's such a shame. And a very common argument is that Vince needs to retire, something that's shared by Jason Owen here. I think Vince McMahon needs to retire. He's getting up there in age. He's just like Dallas Calhoun and Jerry Jones, and needs to go. It's time for Vince McMahon to call it quits and let Triple H, Stephanie. Sorry about that, everybody. My stream was entirely glitched out, which is very embarrassing when I'm doing this show by myself. But as I was saying with Jason Owen there, that's a very, very common argument. And I think that's a very divisive issue, where a lot of people think that Vince needs to retire. Some people think he could retire someday, or some people think he'll be in WWE headquarters till the day that he's no longer with us. And I think maybe with Vince, that's more likely that he'll never retire. And we'll have to wait for somewhere down the road where someone else is in charge for some of the really pressing issues with WWE, that Vince is like so firmly in charge that we'll have to wait until someone else takes over for them to be fixed. And there's no telling when that could be, and we'll just have to kind of ride it out and hope for the best until then. And some of these issues have been screwed up, as William T. Wade just says. They've been worsened by the pandemic, or some of the things are more evident because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And that's certainly fair when you don't have live crowds, when you don't have any number of things. The travel restrictions, and for months the roster was bare bones with Roman Reigns, Sami Zayn, Daniel Bryan, other guys sitting out. That definitely magnified a lot of issues, especially when WWE was trying to fill TV time. Plenty of things there with that, even more glaring issues and stuff like that. And it's definitely it's going to keep happening. At least based on everything we're seeing in the news today, the COVID-19 pandemic is will remain the state of the world, and let alone the wrestling industry, for some time to come. And thankfully, companies have been doing pretty well in adapting. For WWE with the Thunderdome, AEW is doing what they're doing. And so thankfully, even though the pandemic has, as William T. Wade just says, screwed things up, there have been plenty of plus sides as well. And hopefully we'll continue to see the companies evolve. And back to Vince McMahon for a second, Noel, Orlando, or Alon saying that it seems Vince McMahon doesn't push people from NXT. He gives up on them. NXT, they're great, and they go to the main roster, it's different. And that's very true. You look at Alistair Black, Keith Lee, Bobby Roode, big example from a couple of years ago. That's definitely a recurring pattern, and it's a shame because people get over NXT, they thrive in NXT, and whether it's a change in creative or the fact that Vince is more involved or whatever it may be, people seem to just kind of go from NXT. Matt Riddle, another one that just fall apart on the main roster, really, that they get mishandled, that the Vince doesn't get their characters, and that it does seem like he gives up on them in some ways. And it's a shame, and it does make you think that WWE could be better off when the day comes that that Vince is no longer in charge. They'll have a little more, at least in theory, a little more cohesiveness there. Excuse me. But until then, we will likely see more of the same of NXT stars kind of floundering on the main roster, and it's a shame because these are people that get so much support, so much popularity on NXT, and then they just kind of flop on the main roster, and that's all there really is to it. Here's an interesting little tidbit. Noel Orlando Orlon saying they heard that Drew McIntyre and Sheamus wanted to go to NXT UK. Now, obviously, that would make a lot of sense. Both guys being from the respective parts of the United Kingdom and whatnot. That would be odd in the sense that NXT UK definitely does not have the viewership, the prominence, or the I won't say importance, but basically, it is kind of the minor leagues to the main NXT in a way, where anytime NXT UK interacts with NXT, it feels like in a lot of ways, the way that it feels when NXT interacts with the main roster of WWE. There's such a steep drop off that it would be surprising to see McIntyre and Sheamus or any European stars on the NXT UK, even though obviously on paper it makes a lot of sense. And as we were just talking about with NXT, plenty of people don't want to move up, and that makes all the sense in the world if they're just going to flop. As William T. Wade just point out, people on NXT don't want to move up because they don't want to, flounder, and they why move up if you know that they're going to mishandle you? Like that just, people like Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, they're better off in NXT in the sense that they can stay there, be happy there, better schedule. It's just better in a lot of ways, or at least you're more apt to have some control of your character, or at the very least have some, better booking, for lack of a better word. And that seems to be the case with plenty of people that we see over and over again. As I said earlier, so much talent is being wasted, both on NXT, as we see with William T. Wade here pointing out talent being wasted. So much talent being wasted on NXT, so much talented wrestlers being wasted on the main roster. I talked about in recent shows, and WWE has probably the most talented roster in the world. I will say that, don't at me or do, but I think WWE has such a tremendous roster, top to bottom, main eventers, mid-carders, everywhere in between, men's, women's, everything. And so much of the problems that are just underutilized, and it's such a crying shame. Guys like Big E, guys like Alistair Black, Keith Lee, Ricochet, so many examples of guys that could be absolute stars, and they're just underutilized or misutilized and wasted, and it's awful. Laura Rock asked, can I see Vega with Sammy Guevara for NXT? I think that's a natural pairing. Both are very charismatic. NXT, AEW has Kip Sabian and Penelope Ford, and plenty of pairings like that. So a pairing of Vega and Guevara would make a lot of sense. I can see it now. They're both got that heel energy down. I would definitely be happy to see that. If Vega does go to NXT, wow, I did it again. If Vega does go to AEW, and at this point, there's just no way to know where she will go. But as I said earlier, I think she'll definitely thrive wherever she ends up. One of the big headlines from this week, as Craig Backman points out, WWE Tribute to the Troops is back. It's back on TV. It'll be on Fox this year, which is a big, big platform. Tribute to the Troops is always a fun event. It's literally, as the title would suggest, is a tribute to the armed forces. Sorry, and it's always a fun show. It's always just kind of a nice, emotional show, thanking our troops and, acknowledging them. Plenty of members of the roster have served. Lacey Evans and Montez Ford are the two examples that come to mind of veterans. And so it's always nice to have that kind of crossover there. So I'm very happy to see that. And I'm very excited to see just what happens. Usually it's an inconsequential show. You'll have probably a Santa Claus pop up. It's around Christmas time, but it's always a lot of fun. Turn your mind off, just enjoy it. It'll be good. And now Dan Greathouse pointing out the weirdness of Chelsea Green's debut. She comes on SmackDown and gets hurt. Again, I haven't seen that confirmed myself. The rumor was that she got hurt. She was in that fatal 4-way match, and she just appeared, and the announcer didn't say anything, and we have no idea what happened. And we'll just have to wait and see. It was a very weird situation, at least by the looks of it. AEW makes more than NXT. Hashtag WWE sucks, according to Daniel Miller. I can't say that. I'm a WWE. Oops, sorry, wrong comment there. Mikey F is saying Yankees make more than anyone in WWE, but I can't agree that WWE sucks. Obviously, they have a lot of problems. They're not perfect, but at the end of the day, I love WWE. I'm not afraid to admit it. They have plenty of problems. I was very upset about the whole Selena Vega situation and plenty of morally questionable things like that. I can't defend stuff like that, and because I don't agree with it. But I'm a WWE fan through and through. Always have been, always will be, barring absolute catastrophe. But AEW does the one thing to kind of take that comment from Daniel Miller. AEW does have a lot more. At least direct resources where they have TNT, they have, Tony Khan, with tons of cash, tons of financial support. And NXT, while obviously they're owned by WWE, it feels like NXT doesn't necessarily have that backing. So a lot of the time they are kind of lesser than, in the sense of AEW is the big leagues comparatively in the hypothetical, or I should say proverbial Wednesday night wars. And James Espanto Fernando Tagoy saying that WWE is so petty. Rusev could have sold so much merchandise and been a huge star for them, but they refused to let him be a main event guy. Rusev, probably one of the biggest examples of WWE wasting somebody, and then
any number of issues kind of derailing his own time there. Now that he's in AEW and Lana's being punished for it. Obviously, that's a shame, and we've talked about that here and elsewhere on the WrestleZone Podcast Network. Lana being punished for her husband going to AEW is very petty, definitely, and WWE is known for that, being very petty, and it's just ridiculous. It's something that WWE has shown time and again, and it's just a shame because when you have these talented people and you're letting pettiness and any number of other things get in the way, it leads to stuff like we're seeing where talent people leave the company, go elsewhere when they could have and should have been really talented stars. But at the end of the day, WWE is going to WWE, and that's all there really is to it. So overall, it was a great episode of SmackDown tonight. Maybe a step down from some recent weeks. I really, really enjoyed Drew McIntyre being on the show. While it did pretty much confirm the brand's what's dead, as I've been saying in recent weeks. It was a pleasant surprise. Obviously, I didn't tune into SmackDown tonight, and I expect to see the Scottish psychopath, the former WWE champion Drew McIntyre, and he picked up the win in the main event heading into Monday. And we'll have to see what happens on Monday night when he very well could win the WWE Championship. So sign off in the comments. Let me know what you think of the show tonight. Give it a rating from 1 to 10. 1 being Shorty G, Chad Gable, and 10 being American Alpha Chad Gable, for lack of better comparison. I think that it was a solid show. Definitely still in the sense of, SmackDown's been very solid recently, and this is very, very much in that vein. I'll go a solid 7.5. I think that the Drew and Roman stuff was really, really solid, and that really made me want to see a feud between the two of them. If this is the end of the Rey Mysterio Seth Rollins feud, thank goodness. It's a long time coming, and it was a solid enough ending. And now we've got Seth Rollins and Murphy going off in a new direction by the looks of it. We have Michael Yuffa saying he'll give it a 7. James Espanto, Fernando Tagore saying 6.8. Ooh, Daniel Miller with a 4.5. Ouch, that hurts. William T. Wages much kinder with an 8. Noel Orlando Verlon saying I give the show a 7. So you'll see, the numbers back it up from you guys. A fairly solid show. Not perfect by any means, not out of this world, but week in, week out, pretty good show. And I'm very happy to be covering it. I'm very honored to be hosting the show and doing this every week. I really enjoy interacting with you all, and I really appreciate you spending your Friday nights with me rather than doing anything else. I'm very touched by that. Check out any number of the other terrific shows that we have on the WrestleZone Podcast Network. You've got 2 dynamite dudes with attitude with the D'Angelo brothers. You've got the WrestleZone Wrap Up with Kevin Kellum and any number of our wonderful writers like John Clark and Robert DeFelice. And we always have those shows going out during the week for news wrap-ups and as well for Raw, NXT, and pay-per-view wrap-ups. So be sure to keep a lookout for those. Tune in next week to this show. And also, any number of interviews we've got going any day of the week. I'll always keep an eye out for those. We put out great content. We just put up Doc Allis interviews, and always adding to our wonderful, wonderful library of interviews of many, many talented wrestlers out there in the world of professional wrestling. And as always, the world remains a complicated, scary, messy, and frightening place. I'll leave it at that. But no matter what happens in the world, no matter what's going on, in any sense, with all the stuff with the pandemic and everything, there's one thing that will always get us through, one thing that always gets me through the day, and I hope it does for you as well. No matter what happens in the world, we do one thing, and that's enjoy wrestling.